right, today we're gonna be making the tomato basil sauce with roasted almonds and garlic. So fun fact about that roasted almonds part, once again, I have a nut allergy, and so we're gonna have to be getting a little creative here to kind of swap those out. So those almonds are really important because they add a lot of thickness to the sauce. Without them, they'd be a little bit more, the sauce would be a little bit runnier. And so what we're gonna try today is we're gonna try out some panko breadcrumbs. We're gonna make 2 batches. So our experiment's gonna be one with the panko and then one without the panko. And we're gonna see if you can really tell the difference in the texture, see how the panko affects the flavor of the sauce, and just overall, differences in taste, texture, all those good things. All right, so all of our ingredients are out here today. We got our 4 tomatoes, 2 cans of diced tomatoes, garlic, fennel seed, olive oil, lemon juice, vodka, pepper, bay leaves, basil, salt, and crushed red pepper. So we're gonna get started first by kind of cutting everything up, getting all the ingredients prepped, and then we'll get going on the sauce. All right, so we got our fennel seeds in our mortar here, and I'm gonna go ahead and crush these up. I put a decent amount in there, and I will just measure out that half a teaspoon from the crushed up fennel seeds, and then we're good to saute. All right, so we got our ingredients ready here. Now we're gonna add them to this pan and saute them. So we've heated this oil up, and now we're gonna drop everything in there. All right, onions are in. I'm gonna add 1 bay leaf to this. 1 bay leaf. And we have our half a teaspoon of that ground fennel seed going in. There we go. And then we have 2 teaspoons of dried thyme leaves. It says to use 2 instead of, says to use 2 if you do dried instead of just the 1 if it's fresh, just because it's not going to be as potent and flavorful when it's dried. So this is a half a teaspoon. We're going to do 4 of these. There's 3, and there's 4. And then finally we need to add our red pepper, salt, and pepper. So for the red pepper, we're gonna have a teaspoon of that. Drop those in. There we go. And then I'm gonna stir this up a little bit, and we'll add that salt and pepper. All right, so we've cooked that mixture up. Off camera, I added that 1.5 teaspoons of salt and half a teaspoon of pepper. So now we're gonna add in our 3 cloves of garlic. Half a teaspoon is a clove for this minced stuff, so we'll do 3 teaspoons into here. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so now we let that cook for just a little bit, and then we're gonna turn it down and just let them simmer for 10 minutes. All right, so we've let that garlic cook for just a second. Now we're gonna add in our diced tomatoes. 1 can, and it's gonna be 2 cans of these, just like that. And then I'll go ahead and reduce that down to a simmer. And we're just gonna let that simmer for about 10 minutes here. And then we'll remove it from the heat. All right, so while our tomatoes and our onion mixture is cooking up there, simmering, I went ahead and put a big old pot of water on this stove here. We're gonna get that boiling up. And so what we're gonna do with that is we're gonna put our tomatoes into that boiling water for about a minute. And what that's gonna do is really soften up the skin of the tomato and just allow you to kind of easily peel it off instead of having to worry about, you know, cutting it off with a knife. So should make it a lot easier. Not included in the recipe, but a little trick that should help us make that part a lot easier. So as we're letting this tomato mixture simmer here, I wanted to talk about water binding, which is one of the key principles we're using in this recipe today. And so essentially what that is when you're cooking things, the water tends to bind to the starches. So in this recipe, a lot of that is gonna be in our vegetables here. Some in those breadcrumbs we're gonna try, which should help thicken up the dish even more. But what's happening here is basically, as we're simmering for these 10 minutes, the water's starting to evaporate. It's hot, so it's starting to go into some of the ingredients in here. And this is really gonna allow that sauce to thicken up, and we aren't gonna get that watery texture that isn't very pleasant. All right, we got our water boiling now. We're gonna go ahead and drop those tomatoes in. I'm gonna use this spoon just so I don't splash myself here. There we go. And like I said, we're just gonna drop those in for a minute. Let that skin really loosen up, and it should make it really easy to just kind of slide it off, and then we'll have our nice peeled tomatoes. All right, so it's been a minute here. We're gonna take these out, and they should be able to slide off pretty easily here. Yep, as you can see, it's already really coming off there, and just like that, we should have a easily peeled tomato. All right, so got our onion and tomato mixture here. It's cooled down a little bit just so it's not too hot. And what we're gonna go ahead and do is, I don't have a half a cup, but we do have this 1/4 of a cup, so we're gonna do a half a cup at a time. So 1, 2, and then this one's going to be the batch with the breadcrumbs. So with each half a cup, I'm just gonna kind of put in a little bit of the breadcrumbs, and we're just gonna blend that up, adding a half a cup each time until it's completely pureed through. And then we'll repeat the process same way, just without the breadcrumbs for the other half of the sauce. All right, so as you can see here, we got our 2 pasta sauces. This is the one with breadcrumbs, definitely a lot thicker. And then this is the one without breadcrumbs, a lot thinner. Looks a little more pasta saucy. This one's definitely thicker, but we'll see how that all changes once we add our final ingredients here. And those 2 final ingredients are gonna be our vodka. So we're gonna be putting a tablespoon and a half in each. And then it's supposed to be the zest of 1 lemon, but I completely forgot to get lemons. So we're just gonna substitute that for just a little bit of that lemon juice. So we'll add those things in now, stir them up. They're gonna boil for a little bit to kind of let that vodka dissolve in there. The role of that vodka is those alcohols kind of help break down the proteins and the other things in the sauce, and that'll kind of help release the flavors of the tomatoes and the onions a little bit more than they already have. So yeah, we'll get started on all that, and we'll see how they're looking when they're boiling. All right, now that our sauces are heated up, we're just gonna add that tomato in there. Do half in this one, a little bit more, and then we'll do half in the other. And then I forgot to bring them over here, but after this, I'm just gonna drop in those basil slivers. It's 14 total, so we'll just do 7 in each. And we're good. All right, so this is our final product. This one was the one with no breadcrumbs. As you can see, still pretty watery. And this is the one with breadcrumbs, still very thick. Definitely loosened up a little bit once we added in the lemon and the vodka, but still pretty thick sauce. We gave them both a taste test. They were both really tasty, very flavorful. Obviously this one was a little bit thicker, but in terms of flavor and texture, not too much of a difference, to be honest. You could definitely feel this one was just a little bit thicker. But yeah, so the breadcrumbs definitely helped thicken it up a little bit. This one tasted more like a, normal pasta sauce. So yeah, really cool experiment. Learned a lot about how all the interactions were with the vodka, the thickening with the breadcrumbs. It was really cool and I enjoyed it.